Joining me is Ambassador David Satterfield. He is with Rice University, of course, the director of the university's Baker Institute for Public Policy, also a U.S. diplomat focusing on the Middle East for over the past 40 years, more than 40 years, as a matter of fact. Ambassador, thanks so much for joining us.
Delighted to be here.
First, I have to ask you, Saturday morning when you first learned of the attacks in this new conflict, what were the first thoughts that went through your mind?
Well, even by the early morning hours, it was clear that the scope of what had happened, hostage-taking, Israeli military facilities, civilian settlements outside of Gaza, stormed by what seemed to be hundreds of Hamas terrorists, with many, many killed. This was shocking, horrific, and absolutely unprecedented in its scope.
All right, a lot of people may not understand the history, may not know the history of this conflict between the Israelis and between the Palestinians. Can you walk us through where
Sure.
this started and take us to where we are now with this Palestinian-Israeli relationship?
1948-49, Israel's War of Independence. The Gaza Strip, that small part outside the Sinai Peninsula, right on the Mediterranean coast, winds up in Egyptian hands, outside the boundaries of the Israeli state.
In 48, that's of course when Israel first became a nation.
That's exactly right. War of Independence stopped, was ended, beginning of 49. 1967, the Six-Day War. Israel overruns the Sinai and the Gaza Strip, as well as the West Bank and the Golan Heights. So Gaza comes under Israeli control for the first time, June 67.
Another pivotal moment, 2005.
2005, then Prime Minister Ariel Sharon makes the decision to unilaterally withdraw from Gaza, leave Gaza to its residents. Over 9,000 Israeli settlers are forced to leave, sometimes at the point of a gun, and Gaza is turned over outside Israeli control. 2006, there are elections. Hamas, the Islamic resistance movement, founded in 1987, takes control of the Gaza Strip. Now, it's important to remember, Hamas, unlike Fatah, Yasser Arafat's Fatah movement, did not accept those famous Oslo Accords of 1993, in which Fatah, Arafat, the PLO, recognized the existence of the State of Israel, agreed to a negotiated, not violent, resolution of outstanding issues. Hamas didn't accept the accords, rejected them, rejected the PLO and Arafat, and continued to insist on a violent course to resolve issues between Israel and the Palestinian people. They became the leader of the rejectionists amongst the Palestinians.
Okay.
2007. 2005, Israel withdraws. 2006, elections. 2007, Hamas seizes control of the Gaza Strip from Fatah. And from 2007 until today, Hamas has ruled, and only Hamas has ruled, in the Gaza Strip as an Islamic movement, rejecting Israel, rejecting a peaceful negotiation to the conflict.
Then we have some other, not minor, but very in rapid succession, 2008, 2009,
2008, 2009, major Israeli campaign in Gaza, ground campaign. Gaza Strip is entered and divided into portions by the Israeli army to bring an end to Hamas violence directed from the Strip outside. 2014, another Israeli major operation against Gaza. And while we have now over here, in the years since, those 9 years, there have been multiple smaller Israeli operations against the Strip. But the general concept was Hamas would recognize, Israel believed, that its interests were served not by attacking outside the Strip, but by allowing the peaceful movement of workers from the Gaza Strip into Israel and accepting financing primarily from Qatar, the state of Qatar, which would allow Hamas to be able to provide for the needs of its people. And this arrangement, this concept of operations, was what governed most of that period between 2014 and today. But then came the events of Saturday. the explosion.
I have to ask you, in your experience, knowing that region so well, knowing this relationship, this conflict so well, what is Israel's most important objective and what should we see in terms of the next steps?
With the understanding that the scope of this horrific violence against Israeli civilians is unprecedented. And just for a moment, more Jews killed, murdered in a single day since the end of the Holocaust in Nazi Germany. More Israeli civilian dead in a single event since the founding of the state. Over 100 hostages taken, children, elderly, and brought back into Gaza. There is no parallel or precedent to this. Now, traditionally, the focal point of the Israeli people, of their governments, has been the return of hostages, living or dead. But with these numbers and with the death count as it is and rising with every hour that passes, the dilemma facing the Israeli government is going to be, do you negotiate for the hostages, which typically means release of Palestinian prisoners or other concessions, or do you simply demand their release unharmed? Do you conduct a ground operation, or do you confine yourself to air operations? Prime Minister Netanyahu has been extremely reluctant to put the Israeli Defense Forces on the ground into Gaza. It's not an easy kind of campaign. It doesn't usually turn out altogether successfully when it comes to an end. But he is under enormous pressure right now to act. But how do you act in a way that doesn't put those hostages at harm? How do you get the hostages returned without paying an unacceptable price to a terrorist organization? That's the dilemma.
Right. Okay. All right. Ambassador David Satterfield, thank you so much.
Thank you.